guys, it's Casey, and today we're going to talk about my May TBR. So real quick before we get started, I wanted to check back in with April's TBR, and now that April is just about over, I can say pretty confidently that I am not going to get it done, unfortunately, but I do think I'm going to read 5 of the 6 books that I set out to read, and I will have started the 6th. I just don't think I have enough time to completely get it done in the last couple days of the month. So in addition to all the books I'm talking about today on this TBR, I will be finishing out Fool's Errand by Robin Hobb, which is the 6th book on my TBR that I have not managed to finish from last month. So for this TBR, I will be playing my dice TBR game that I usually play, where I roll to get a number 1 through 100, and that corresponds to a prompt on a list of prompts that I've made for myself, and I have to pick a book that fits that prompt. So without any further introduction, here is roll number 1. Okay, time for roll number 1. 77. And the first roll was 77, which is a humorous book. Again, I think this is the only prompt that has repeated at all so far this year, and this is the 3rd time I've got it, so I would say my dice are weighted, but I'm using a different set every time, so I don't know. But for that prompt, I'm going to be picking Bloody Rose by Nicholas Ames, which is the 2nd book in the Banned series and the sequel to Kings of the Wild. So Kings of the Wild I actually used for the first time I got this prompt, and it follows a group of retired adventurers who are essentially getting the band back together and going on a mission to save one of the members' missing daughters. And I adored Kings of the Wild. I gave it 5 stars. It was the perfect balance of adventure and fun, and it was very funny and just a really good time. Like, I don't think I've had that much fun reading a book in a minute, so it was amazing. So when this one came up, I knew I was gonna pick Bloody Rose. So this one I think follows some of the characters that we met in the first book, but it's not a direct sequel, like it doesn't follow that band again. And I don't know much about the plot other than that it follows a girl who is desperately wanting some adventure, and when the adventurer Bloody Rose rolls into town, she decides to sign on as their bard so that she can start seeing the world and seeing the adventures that she wants to be having. So I'm looking forward to this book a lot. If it's anything like the first one, I'm going to have a great time. Roll number 2. I knocked it over, but it was 30. So 37. So roll number 2 was 37, and that stands for a novella, and for that I'm going to be reading Rogue Protocol by Martha Wells. So Rogue Protocol is the 3rd book in the Murderbot Diaries, which is a series I've been reading kind of slowly but off and on since last year. But I recently got myself a copy of all of the books in the series, so they're a lot more accessible now instead of having to wait for them from my library. So Murderbot is about this security unit robot who calls themselves Murderbot, who has broken their governor module, so essentially they kind of have free will and sentience now, and they can do whatever they want. And what Murderbot does is continues to go on some jobs and wants to watch TV shows all day long and is just an anxious mess. And I am having a lot of fun with this series. I think I gave the first one 3 stars because I struggled to connect with some of the characters, but the second one I gave 4 stars because I really felt like I cared a lot about Murderbot in that one, and I'm interested in finding out more about their past as they're slowly kind of trying to unravel the mysteries of how they got to where they are, since there are chunks that they don't remember. So I'm very excited to continue on with this series because it's only been getting better for me, so I'm hoping that this can be another 4 or 5 star entry. And after last month's TBR being a ton of huge books, I was very excited to roll novella and get myself something a little bit easier. Roll number 3. 39. The next roll was 39, which is a very big book. So a very big book, I am calling a book over 700 pages. So I got a novella immediately followed by a very big book. So I guess the dice weren't being that kind to me after all, but for this, I've decided to pick Priory of the Orange Tree by Samantha Shannon. So this book is 800 pages of like actual content and then some supplemental stuff in the back. But it's huge. Like the paper must be thick or something because it takes up so much space. Like it takes up as much space as the Stormlight Archive books, but it is shorter by a couple hundred pages. Regardless, this is one I have owned and have been wanting to read for a while, and I just haven't found the opportunity to do so, so we're taking it now. I actually don't know a huge amount about this book. I know that it is a fantasy standalone, which is always pretty rare, and genuinely, all I know is that there is a queen, that this is gay, and that there are dragons. That is all I know, and that is all I need to know to be sold on this book. I'm so excited to read this, and it is beautiful, so it would be nice to actually have read this book. But this appears to be a multi-perspective fantasy book, and I have heard a ton of good things about it, and I've really been looking forward to this one, so I'm excited to finally get to it. And I'm hoping if I like Samantha Shannon's writing style, that might motivate me to pick up her other series, The Bone Season, because I've been eyeing that one recently too. Time for roll number 4. 22. Next, I rolled 22, which is a friend pick. So I asked my friend to pick a book for me, knowing full well what she was going to choose, and that is Cinder by Marissa Meyer. So she has been trying to get me to read this book for a while now, and I've just been kind of, refusing sounds too harsh, but I've been kind of refusing to do it. It's not one that I would have picked up on my own, but that's the point of this prompt. So I will be reading Cinder, which is the first book in the Lunar Chronicles series, which is a series of sci-fi, I think, retellings of classic fairy tales. And the first one is Cinder, so obviously it's a retelling of Cinderella. I also know that this series was pretty big a while back, and the hype of it just kind of missed me. I didn't read it then, and it was always one of those series that I said if I hadn't read it then, I didn't think I was gonna go back and read it, but hey, that's what this prompt is for. So I will be starting the Lunar Chronicles this month. Roll number 5. 4. Just 4. Next, I rolled 4, which is a contemporary, and I kind of struggled with this one because I actually read a contemporary in March, and I basically almost never read contemporary, so I was like, well, shoot, what am I gonna read? But I decided to go with Radio Silence by Alice Oseman. So this is a book that I have wanted to read for a while. So Radio Silence is a young adult contemporary book that is about this girl who is finishing up her last year in high school, and I think she's kind of unsure of where she wants to go in life. And she meets this friend, and they start having a very close friend relationship, and she starts to learn a lot about herself and who she is. And I think there's a podcast element to it. The friend might have a podcast. She listens to a podcast. I'm not sure. I know there's podcasts involved. This is another book that I've heard nothing but good things about, and it's one of those YA contemporaries that I just really want to have read. So we're gonna be reading it this month. And the final roll number 6. 90. And finally, I rolled 90, which is my sister pick. So I texted my sister, and she picked a book for me that she read last year, and that is Coraline by Neil Gaiman. So I have a couple of books by Neil Gaiman, all of which have apparently fallen over, but I really enjoy his writing, but it's been a long time since I've read a book of his, and I've never actually read Coraline. I've also never seen the movie in its entirety, so I'm going into this with very little knowledge. But I do know that it's pretty short, which is, again, a nice break from last month's TBR. But I believe this book follows a girl named Coraline as she and her family have moved into this new house, and while she's exploring, she finds a door into kind of another version of her life in which everything is a little bit better, everything's the way that she wants it to be, or so she thinks. And then eventually the family that's there wants her to stay with them, and she starts finding out more and more sinister things about this sort of world while she's there. That's about all I know, and it's a pretty short book, so I don't want to get too much more information because that would be like most of the plot. But I really wanted to get into more of Neil Gaiman's work because I've enjoyed everything that I've read from him so far, even if it's just a couple of books. So I was very excited when my sister picked this. I think it's gonna be a good one. And that's pretty much it. I don't have that much to say about this month's TBR. I've got these 3, and then the other 3 that I actually don't own myself. But I think this is a much more manageable TBR than last month's, and hopefully I'll have a lot more time since the school year will be over after the first week in May. Can't wait. Oh, and also most of Fool's Errand. So I guess this is a more accurate stack of what I'm going to be reading, and that's super manageable. We can make this happen. But I think that's about it. If you guys have read any of these, let me know. I'd love to chat with you. Or what are some things that you're going to be reading this month? I'd love to know. But I think that's all I've got for you guys today. If you want to keep up with what I'm reading, I have a link to my Goodreads down in the description below. But other than that, I'll see you guys next time.